Okay, so today we're taking a look at Disaster Report for Summer Memories on the Nintendo Switch. Now, following a massive earthquake, you're tasked with escaping a city that's crumbling around you. The big question though, is it worth the journey? Well, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we do, join our growing family here at SwitchCorner, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I've been super excited for this one, so let's get started. Okay, so the basic premise is this. Opening the game, you're travelling into town for an unknown reason. While minding your own business on the bus awaiting your stop, emergency tones from phones around you start going haywire. It's a warning, an earthquake has hit. Now before you know it, tremors reach you, all hell breaks loose, the bus flips, and when you awake, expect to be crawling on your hands and knees through glass. Yeah, lovely stuff. So why are we going into this city? Are you the nice guy who helps others, or simply fend for yourselves? Will you exploit this situation for cash or be charitable? They're all decisions that the game puts in your hands. Even when it comes to your dialogue responses for these moments, they give you like 10 to choose from, and I gotta say, giving you this level of power of deciding what our character's backstory is, it makes them so much more relatable as a survivor. With the opening moments, these are just some of the basic choices you're going to make, and this is going to be the entire way through the game making these decisions. But I'd created my own character with the basic editor. I'd been asked what my reaction would be in an emergency situation. I was asked how I wanted to react to the emergency tones from the phones around me. I was asked why I'm on my way into town, and then I was even asked, do I want to give up my seat for an elderly lady who's struggling? For those that want to know my character, travelling from a town pretty far away, I had a big interview that day, and yes, I was nice enough to give my seat up. But talk about bad timing arriving in town just as the earthquake hits. So overall with the story, I enjoyed the tale, but I will say the latter half of the experience, it did lose its way a little bit, it lost some of the realism, and it shifts the focus from the earthquake to more a story of dangerous characters. It all felt a little unnecessary for me and a little bit too Hollywood. For me, the earthquake was always the star of the show, and I wish the developers didn't forget this. With around 12 hours of gameplay though, depending on of course how much you explore, there's plenty of story here and some great characters to meet. So while I normally do start with gameplay, let's talk graphics here, because I know you are all judging this one nearly immediately for seriously lacking in that department, and I'd absolutely have to agree with you. As games go, visually this is about as last gen as they get, but honestly for me it still has its charm. It very much builds into that kind of like almost cult-like experience this game is destined to become. So much so it actually almost reminded me of Deadly Premonition in that sense. It's just so old school. In fact here, even the doors often get their own like dedicated animation as this game chugs along, so think back to like the original Resident Evil. Now I do refuse though to say it is all bad. There are a few moments of beauty in here, like some of the earthquake effects. They're for sure impactful and intense, and then you'll even occasionally get the well-crafted cutscene where they manage to capture the character's emotions, and that's impressive with so little in the facial animation area. You've got to admit, it's an achievement. Sadly with this said though, the graphics, the animation, all of it has a seriously big impact on the game's portrayal of realism. Yes, the earthquake effects, they are solid, but the game can't sell it when NPCs are just standing still. They have zero emotional reactions, you know, people dying or events taking place. And even when they do have a reaction, often it has like this serious delay which pushes it into like nearly the comedic. It's a real shame because they capture the tremors, they capture the earthquake, but these things take away from it feeling as dangerous or as scary as it should be. Disaster Report 4 Summer Memories' biggest issue by far though, it's the frame rate. At moments it can be fine, and for a brief second you see the potential of this game before it quickly panics and drops to like 5 or 6 frames a second, crushing any immersion you had in just a few moments. Your struggle here just to battle against the controls more than anything else. Something as simple here as rotating the camera can be like the end of times for this game. I wish I could say this was rare as well, you know, just the odd moment, but sadly, it's nearly consistently volatile throughout the entire experience. Now I don't personally believe graphics are all, let's say, that important, but frame rate, that is. So it's super disappointing when some areas feel borderline unplayable. Look at me entering this location right here, look how slow it goes. Look, I mean, do I have to say anything else? Also, you should really factor in here as well, some of the load times, they can be extremely long, which is kind of surprising given these issues. Overall, graphically, I can handle the dated visuals, honestly. In fact, I really kind of like them in that retro charm kind of way. I never really took issue with them at all during my playthrough. What does let me down though, it's the animations and the frame rate that just destroy the entire immersion. What should be terrifying feels less than threatening because of it for the most part. Okay, so let's talk gameplay on this one. It's very much a classic adventure game from 2008. So yeah, think early days PS2. That makes sense though, given this series' history. In the West on the PS2, we got Disaster Report 1 and Raw Danger, the retitled for the West sequel. There was also a third entry as well, but that one never did actually leave Japan. Here, the idea though, it's simple: explore a location, interact with characters scattered around this environment, and work out what triggers that next big event pushing the plot forward. Think, moving to a location where a building will collapse, only to realise there's a woman screaming for help from the very top, and it's your job to get up there and save her. This though, it's not a game that's going to hold your hand at all. Clues, hints, don't be silly. This one's old school. Just go figure it out yourself, go talk to people. It takes a little while to get used to again, but it sure is refreshing in a world of video games that just don't give us any freedom nowadays. This though, I gotta say, it provides a serious level of reward, and as that next cutscene would begin and the story continued, I couldn't help but smile to myself. So just to give you an idea of how this works, how deep this thing gets, just to get to the second location in the opening 30 minutes of the game, I'd answered all the story questions, created my character, helped an old man through a panic attack with a small conversation in the park, found a backpack in a store, assisted what appeared to be a Yakuza track down someone who was running away, and then rounded up a group of schoolgirls and reunited them with their teacher. Now, little did I know that the schoolgirl interaction would be the one that triggered me to the next location, but then characters like the Yakuza would show up again later in the story and continue that part of the quest, shall we say. Nearly 90% of this experience, so it is just that talking to NPCs and watching relatively long cutscenes. So understandably, I'm going to put it out there now, this one may not be for everyone. There's no weapons here, no fancy defensive moves or superhero-like powers. Just a man or woman trying to survive, and in that sense, it's almost like a character study, I'd say. In fact, for me, that is my favourite part of this entire game, meeting all these unique personalities and even having some of them join you for large chunks of the story as you tackle the world together. These moments when I was paired up with someone for the ride, that was some of the highlights for me. Outside of that though, there's very little else to this one honestly, and nor does it really need it. It does what it sets out to achieve. Set up an earthquake and see you escape. It presents a scenario, you solve it, and then you move on, of course, against ramping odds. You can expect everything from saving individuals from being crushed, heading into crumbling buildings, feeding the locals who are without food, calling a local rescue team, finding the keys for a locked door because you can't just kick it for some reason, and then even saving a teddy bear. It really is that varied, even though I will say I could have done without that weird, occasional comedic one, take that teddy bear one I just mentioned. It's a novelty and it's nice, sure, but it doesn't really suit the tone of the game or what it's trying to portray. On game tone as well, while I'm at it, you'll also find a ton of outfits you can collect and wear. Some everyday style, some ridiculous. Yes, it breaks the tone, but it's also entirely optional, so if you want to wear them, then go ahead. Also, I gotta give it to NIS America too. They've added 17 free costumes to download on the eShop, and most publishers, let's face it, they'd be asking me to pull out my credit card for such things. So all this gameplay then, it's all paired up with an inventory management system, a compass which honestly does nothing, I didn't even look at it really, but you can find some cool collectibles for it to change the dial in the middle, and then finally, of course, at the top of the screen, your health bar and stress meter. This stress meter, it grows based on what's occurring around you. The bigger it gets, the smaller your health bar becomes. Sadly though, the game, it does very little to explain what impacts your stress levels, so it's frequently unavoidable to combat it from growing. Fortunately though, a quick rest at a save point, that will fix you right up. Also, it's worth noting that you're going to be expected to feed your character, get them drinks, and also make them go to the bathroom occasionally. Weird, I know, but it's relatively easy to manage. So frustrations wise, yes, there's definitely a few here. Invisible barriers, first off, they're a pain. Let's say you need to walk down a tunnel, you walk up to it and there's a bike lying on the ground. 30 seconds ago you were scaling a wall, but somehow this bike, it's too much for your brain to cope with. Basically, yeah, I know you need to trigger the event to open up that area first, but I feel like they could have been a bit more creative considering there's like a whole earthquake happening. You know, most of the time it was boulders and big chunks of building, and it's not frequent, but I couldn't help but laugh occasionally when these little trivial things came along. Also, the controls, I gotta say, they're pretty weak. They work, don't get me wrong, but they're about as rigid and stiff as you can get. You can walk at a super slow pace, sprint, which will totally trip up the frame rate, scream, which seems to do, for the most part, absolutely nothing, because no one around you seems to react, and then duck, which is essential when buildings collapse or shockwaves occur. If you don't duck, you'll be knocked to your ass, lowering that health bar. This duck as well, it also doubles up as a much used crawl mechanic, and I've never seen someone crawl so slowly in all of my life. Either his clothes or her clothes are way too tight, or your character needs to get their shit together and add a little urgency to their approach. I know I wouldn't be going this slow if I had the remains of a building above my head just waiting to collapse. The last real awful part of the game, it's an entire hour or so long section in the middle where you're on a boat. Never have controls been so awful, and with tons of backtracking in this particular section and moving around these small ass apartments where the camera has a panic attack, this section was nearly enough to make me just quit the entire game. When you get to the boat section, just keep on telling yourself you can do it and just keep on pushing through. It will be over before you know it, and the rest of the game will feel like a masterpiece, and it's very short. There's a lot of good game left to conquer. Overall, the design here, it is very dated, proving to be an exercise in patience and curiosity. Fortunately, I will say this does mean it's also incredibly rewarding making that next step, because you were the one that actually did it. You didn't have the game pushing you in the right direction. You made these decisions, you took these steps. If you can face the issues in gameplay, then you may still find a lot to like here, like I did, but you're gonna need to be prepared to be in a, let's face it, forgiving mood. So audio wise, well, first off, we get all recorded dialogue with no dub. It's a subtitle experience, and for me, I do prefer it that way, honestly. And then the sound effects and ambience, it's all relatively strong, from the earthquake tremors to the crumbling buildings to the nature and cityscapes surrounding you. For the soundtrack then, it's not frequent, instead relying on natural tones for the most part, but when we do get a track in here, I really liked it to the point where I was trying to actually hunt it down online, but sadly I struggled to find too much. So the final verdict, and Disaster Report 4 is very much a game that's given me an internal struggle when it comes to putting a final score on the experience. Why? Because while I can see the countless issues it has, I still walked away thinking, you know what, I enjoyed that, I hope we see a fifth game. What got me, it was the lack of guidance. I loved it. I don't want my hand out. Let me meet these people. Let me choose who I help and who I ignore. Let me decide if someone comes along for the ride with me. This character was very much relatable because I decided exactly who they were and didn't just, choose their name and then call it a day. It was a non-stop list of questions with tons of options which truly let me shape them. Yes, I will say I was a little disappointed with the shift in storyline towards that endgame, but you know what, after all of it, I'd still go back for a second playthrough. Now, being honest with myself though, I do recognise that the list of problems here, it is considerably longer than the good points. Controls straight out of the 90s, terrible invisible walls, realism breaking encounters, a boat section which may be one of the worst adventure sections I've ever played, NPCs that have little to no emotion regarding what's happening around them, and then the frame rate that just constantly dropped through the floor. Today, with these factors in mind and that full AAA retail price they've got on this one, I'm giving this one a below average 4 out of 10. Now, for the right audience, I've got to say this, there's weirdly a lot to like in here if you can battle through those issues. Sometimes a storyline and a setup is just that powerful that you can be that forgiving, and that's how I feel about it for myself. Fix the frame rate and I'd even be bumping this probably up to a 6 out of 10 quite easily. Recognise here though that I'm reviewing this one objectively, even though I walked away happy, in fact so happy I actually just ordered the cool ass collector's edition. Fans of cult games or even like PS2 adventure game fans, I'd say check this out. If you fall into that arena, I think there might be something you will enjoy in here. Even fans of NIS America like myself, they've brought something incredibly unique here to the Western market, and as always I respect that. I'm a huge fan of what they do. Thanks for watching, hit that subscribe button, join our growing family, leave the video a like if we helped you out, and let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll see you all on the next video.